Join my grandkids with their combined backgrounds in DNA, journalism, and law as Jeremy and Kelly share tales of injustice and intrigue with a focus on true crime in the South. So sit back, grab a glass of sweet tea, and welcome to Southern Fried Homicide.
Hey guys, welcome back to Southern Fried Homicide. It's been a while.
Hey. Yep, it's been a hot minute.
Yeah, despite our best efforts.
We say this every time.
I know.
We both have lives and jobs, and we don't get paid for this. So
Yeah, but unfortunately, one of us got COVID, so that would be me. And that delayed things as well, so...
But he's feeling much better.
Much better.
He's negative. It's fine. We're all good. We're all healthy. We're okay.
Yes.
We're just late.
So apologies for that. But what we're going to do today is a little different than normal. We're going to give you some updates on some cases we've covered in the past, and then also cover some highlights from an event that we attended, which is where I got COVID.
Yes. So this is a special edition episode of Southern Fried Homicide.
So why don't you tell everybody about our Nancy Little case and what happened recently with that?
Oh, that was super nice. We got to meet her brother, James Little. He came into town because he has an art show at one of the local art galleries. I believe it's the Dixon.
Yeah.
That's there for
a couple months.
A couple months. I haven't got a chance to go yet. I really, really want to. I plan on it. But meeting him in person was so nice. He was such a nice man, and he's so passionate still about this case, and
the pain is still fresh.
Yes, it's still fresh. I don't know another better word for it for him. You know, he's very active, very trying to pursue things and get things moving, and I don't know, it was just really lovely to meet him.
Because we've talked to a lot of the family members on the phone and through text messages, but we have yet to meet them, even though most of them are here locally in the Memphis area. He lives in New York. And has been kind of the voice behind...
He's the driving force, I think, by trying
keeping
to keep
it alive, the case alive. And it was nice to meet him in person. He invited us to the opening, the grand opening of the art show. But unfortunately, that's the day we were both flying out.
We're
supposed to be flying out to this conference that we
So
attended.
any local people, any local Memphians, I encourage you to go to the Dixon Art Gallery because he does have an exhibit there. I plan on going and just trying to give him a little buzz as well. He's a nice man. And
he invited Detective Martello, who's from the cold case unit that's working on his case, and he said that he was able to attend. So we're supposed to, he asked for me to call him, which I got to do, I guess, this week.
Yeah.
See what's going on with Mr. Martello.
Yeah.
And we've also been working with Jessica Johnson's family still, trying, if folks remember, there was a shoe that had a blood stain on it that seemed questionable. This is the case where she was found
by the mailbox.
With the shoestring. So, and she didn't have her shoes on, if I recall, but the shoes were...
with the police, and then they gave the shoes back to her
the
family. But
so,
without the shoelaces.
Right. There's a blood stain on the shoe, so they'd like to have it tested. So I've been in touch with a lab trying to help facilitate that, and have a call with them scheduled this coming Monday. So hopefully we'll get find out some information about how much it's going to cost, because I'm sure it's not cheap. And
how did you hear about this lab?
I reached out to I would say a colleague, but someone in the space,
okay,
and asked for a recommendation.
Okay,
because I didn't know where to go for that kind of testing. Because a lot of the labs that you work with, investigative genetic genealogy, only work with law enforcement. And actually, this lab, when they emailed back, said typically we work directly with law enforcement, but there are exceptions. So that's kind of the route it seems like we're going now. So we're supposed to connect on Monday and find out if there's anything they can do to help test it, and then go from there to see if it's her blood or someone else's.
Right, that would be great. Just finding out something. It needs to at least be tested so they can at least have a little bit of peace of mind.
I wish they could get the phone unlocked, but I don't know.
I know. I don't
know how that works.
I don't understand that.
Then in the news this week, Lorenzen Wright's ex-wife, Shara, had her first parole hearing.
I watched part of it. Did you watch the whole thing?
I tried to, but unfortunately I had a work call that interrupted it, so I didn't catch all of it. But interestingly, it was the first time we've heard from her because she didn't go to trial.
Right.
Remember, she pled.
Right.
She cut a deal.
Yeah.
And so we never got to hear her story. Well, this week she told her story, and she had the tears.
Did she say that she was indirectly responsible?
Yeah, she would never really admit.
In the world? She plotted the whole thing.
She gave all kinds of excuses as to why she didn't feel like she was directly responsible, and had these.
Because she claims she didn't pull a trigger.
She didn't pull a trigger.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what she said.
That's her claim.
Yeah.
And his mother was there. Lorenzen's mother was like right behind her or something, right? Or sitting
really
nearby.
So it looked like the way it was filmed. It looked like maybe she was in Nashville in her room with her supporters, and then Lorenzen's family and supporters seemed to be in Memphis, and it was like video conferenced. So it looked like they were together, but not physically. His mother did speak and basically contradicted a lot of the information that Shara was saying, and Shara and Lorenzen's son, Junior, spoke on behalf of his mother and was saying how that these scary drug dealer people came to approach him in school. It was like, "Where's your father?" And that, he was trying to support his mother and saying that his dad had been involved in selling drugs, and that he was aware of this box of money in the attic, that he used to go into the attic when his dad wasn't home and open up the box with thousands of dollars and take pictures of it, to put on social media or what have you. So he was really supporting his mother's claim that Lorenzen was involved in some drugs. So, but his mother spoke up and said, when all that, I guess, story very first came out, was a different child who said that someone came to the school and approached them. So she was calling her out.
Yeah.
Shara, they asked her, "What are you going to do if you get paroled? Where are you going to go?" She's like, "Oh, I'm going to go to this Center for Abused and Battered Women, this program. And I got a lady here who's going to speak on behalf of me. It's really, something that, it's going to help me." It just reminded me of Jodi Arias when she killed Travis Alexander. She was on trial about all the things that she wanted to accomplish. She pulled the whole abuse card as well.
So there's no resolution to it yet. She isn't released.
She got denied parole by the lead parole officer, and he said that there's, I think, 4 others who have to vote, and I don't know when that vote will happen. But as of last week, I appreciated how he said he felt it was abhorrent that she was even eligible, or she's not even eligible, but somehow she was up for parole.
It's because of the deal she took.
Yeah, so he was very polite with her throughout the whole thing. Like, when I was watching it at first, I thought, oh, he's kind of
being kind of nice.
He was being very nice to her, but once he let her finish her rambling and her storytelling and heard from everybody else, then he said how he really felt. And so I'm glad she's paroled. I mean, I'm glad she's not paroled.
Right. I don't think anybody thinks she deserves to be, unless it's her kids. Yeah. Deserves to be paroled.
She gave an update on her kids. The twins are about to enter. I guess they're trying to get into the NBA. Okay. And so she went through like what's going on with all her kids in college and high school, and trying to be the parent. And I don't know. It was interesting to hear from her, because she was talking about Jimmy and
the cousin.
Yep. She was really pushing all the blame towards Jimmy and
Billy Ray Turner.
Yeah, but really Jimmy, that he was involved in the drugs, selling the drugs.
He had a separate thing going on that he's in trouble for, and I think he's in prison.
Yeah, so she was trying to push a lot of the blame there, but then the parole officer guy brought up, well, you went to the scene of the crime and tried to clean it up and borrowed a metal detector, and so you can't really
say I'm indirectly involved. No.
Yeah. So, She says she was trying to protect her family from all these bad guys that were surrounding her. Yeah.
Well, we'll keep
an eye on that case.
Keep an eye on that case because it is interesting still.
And then we got some other cases we've been working on, even though you haven't heard from us. I've decided to look into some missing persons cases.
Right. We are called Southern Fried Homicide, but we're going to branch out a little bit.
Yes. Well, it's assumed that these folks
they might not be around anymore.
Right. So they've been missing since the late 80s. Mm-hmm. And talked to their families, talked to detectives. So we're working on researching. So a lot of the cases that we cover, we want it to be because these cases have gone cold. Mm-hmm. They're not getting, there's so many crimes to be reported on, but, we will cover some like the Lorenzen Wright, some other cases that are
more well known.
Right.
Because those are still interesting. Those well-known ones are still interesting. We got a couple of those that we're planning on doing, but the cold cases and the ones that
those are the ones we're most passionate about.
Exactly.
Because we're investigating. We're really trying to get to the bottom of things. There's one case that we're working on that's got lots of twists and turns, and it's got incest and another marrying his sister and just all kinds of stuff. So we'll get to that one in the next couple of months, hopefully. But so that's kind of what's been going on in terms of cases. And we
also are working on a few other things. We went and got some stickers and some T-shirts made.
We did because we attended CrimeCon.
Right.
So CrimeCon is where we went a few weeks ago, where I got COVID.
Yeah, it's in Las Vegas.
It's in Las Vegas, which was not really the best place for it, in my opinion. I think it kind of detracted from the
seriousness of it?
Yes.
I get what you're saying, yes. Because Las Vegas is a party town. And it also happened to be NFL draft weekend.
Which brought in like 500,000 extra people.
10 bajillion people. And then you and I care nothing about football.
Unfortunately,
So it was weird timing, and it was a weird place to have it, I think.
Yes. But that's where we went. And so we wanted to, we just got our new logo and little characters. So we went and had shirts made, and people were stopping and taking pictures of them.
They were a big hit.
Yeah. Flight attendants liked them.
Mm-hmm. So hopefully we'll be able to do a little bit more with that in the future. We need to have a website built up.
So if anybody's interested sooner than later, and you're like, hey, I'd like a shirt or a sticker or whatever, feel free to reach out.
Got little backpacks made. They're real cute. But everybody loved it. Like the guy that made it, he thought the name was super clever. Well, he was like, is this some really spicy chicken place you're advertising for? I was like, no. But he really liked it. But our name, actually, we got you were the one that came up with it.
Well, I went to the name. When we were working on our first case, the Nancy Little case, I had to go to the main library in Memphis, because to access some of the newspaper articles back from the 80s, that was the only place you could get it. So I was talking to the librarian and telling her what we were doing, and she's like, ooh, Southern Fried Homicide. And I was like, ooh, I like that name. She's like, well, there's a TV show about name that. I was like, oh man, that stinks, because you can't really use the name if it's already in use. So I went back and
we tried to think of a bunch of different names. Could not think of anything.
Yeah, we came up with some, but we just weren't.
They were kind of blah.
Yeah. So long story short, I talked to an attorney friend of mine and said, what do you do if it's copywritten? And she's like, well, you can just contact them and ask them if it's okay to use the name. Because the TV show, I guess
it's done. It
was on years ago. Even though there's still reruns, it's not an active show.
Right.
So I looked up who owned the copyright, contacted them, and within a day they emailed back and was like, yes, good luck with your podcast. Go absolutely, feel free to use it. So we are excited that we were able to use this name.
Yeah.
And
I love it, and I love our logo.
So
Sweet tea and chicken leg.
Yeah, so we just got this new logo. This guy on Facebook, I guess you know how the internet knows everything you're thinking about. We had talked about refreshing our logo, and all of a sudden I started getting all these ads on Facebook about logo design. And this one guy had I don't know, his artwork just caught my attention.
Yeah.
And so I messaged him. It wasn't cheap, and I was hesitant because you had to pay him up front. I'm
right.
like, I don't
Am
know
I gonna hate
you.
this?
Yeah, and I was like, I don't know you. Here I am sending you all this money.
Yeah.
I said, I'm really, taking a leap of faith here. But he was excellent. Anything, we asked him to tweak or, he right off the bat, he kind of got what we were aiming for.
We should add his name to our Instagram if anybody else wants to.
Yes, his name is Jeremy, something with an E.
We will look that up and get that info and put it on our social media.
He was very helpful, though.
Good.
And so now we have a really unique logo that I'm looking forward to, branding that as we go to other conferences, which we're going to do. But kind of the purpose of today's podcast is to give you some highlights from CrimeCon. And for those who don't know what CrimeCon is, it's a true crime convention.
Right.
Similar, you would say, maybe to like Comic-Con.
Except you're not dressing up.
You're not dressing up.
It's very respectful. Like you're not dressing up as like Charles Manson.
No,
that. Or chicken leg and sweet tea. Like we didn't do any of that.
This is not. It's not a convention to, I don't want to say to glorify. It's more about the victims. It's more about the science behind solving the cases.
Yeah.
It's not elevating the criminal.
Yes.
Or focusing on the criminal.
Or the gory details.
No.
I didn't get that from it at all.
Really, once we kind of go through explaining some of the things we learned, I think people will, be excited to maybe check it out for themselves.
Right.
It'll be, it's an annual convention. They have a cruise once a year. They also have an international location. So we'll kind of go through some of the highlights of what we learned. So I got to attend all 3 days. You only got to attend one. You had travel issues.
Yeah, I had flight cancellations. Thanks, Allegiant. Oh my goodness, that flight was a hot mess too.
Yeah, well, budget airline.
Oh my goodness.
But man, the Memphis airport looks nice now,
Right? Y'all go to the Memphis airport.
Yeah, for anybody who's flown through here before, it was embarrassing. It was so dark and dingy.
It looks much better.
Oh, it was just gross looking. And they have modernized it and on the inside.
Huge difference.
Yes. Anywho, so we got to Vegas. This conference was held at the Paris Hotel, which was right across the street from the Bellagio where the NFL draft was. So
my goodness.
Just added to the congestion of people walking around. But so on the first day, there was a lot of investigative genetic genealogy talk,
that's right up your alley.
What I am really passionate about in the past couple of years that I've been able to be involved with. The first speaker, so how it works is they have 3 sessions that you can choose from. So you can go to ballroom 1, 2, or the main ballroom. So I attended the one for the DNA Doe project, and it was really nice meeting the people that I've volunteered with in the past. I'm not actively working with them right now, but I support what they do. So we'll get to meet Margaret Press. She's one of the co-founders of the DNA Doe project, and Kevin Lord. He's a brilliant man that he's been on Dateline actually for representing the DNA Doe project on one of the cases. But it was interesting. They said there's over 40,000 John and Jane Does right now.
Wow.
In the U.S.
Okay.
And that they estimate about 1,000 a year get added to that number. So that's a lot of John and Jane Does. So what they did at the conference is they had a board. They selected, I think, a dozen cases. I tried to look before this, but I couldn't find it. A dozen John and Jane Does that kind of have been lingering for a while. They were all over. They weren't like geographically isolated to a certain area. It was these John and Jane Does from all over the country. And they encouraged the CrimeCon attendees to go to their booth, and they would educate you on how you could help identify these John and Jane Does by if you took a DNA test from Ancestry, MyHeritage, 23andMe, law enforcement, and DNA Doe Project. They do not have access to those databases when you take DNA tests through that. The only way that they can solve crimes using genetic genealogy is if people take their DNA from those testing companies and upload it to one of 2 websites, GEDmatch and family tree DNA.
Okay.
So they were encouraging people, hey, if you've taken a test already, we'll show you how to download your DNA from Ancestry and upload it to GEDmatch.
That would help them. Okay.
It would help them. But they had a ton of matches from CrimeCon attendees, oddly enough, that were matching to these Jane and John Does. They said 19. Where did I write that down?
You said one lady matched 3 of the Jane Does.
She
woman
did.
there.
Maybe that's what I was looking at. Yes, this one lady she tested and she matched 3 different people does, which is crazy.
Yeah.
And they weren't just small matches; they were over 20 centimorgans, which is, it's probably
Centimorgan?
centimorgan. That's the measurement of DNA. Centimorgan.
Okay, I did not know that.
Yeah,
I learned.
The more you know.
The more you know.
It's so like you and I share thousands of centimorgans. Okay, because we're siblings.
Mm-hmm.
And then the smaller the centimorgan, the more distant the relationship.
Okay.
So these people were at least 20 centimorgans or more. So they're third, fourth cousins to the John and Jane Doe. But that's not necessarily a bad thing because they can tell the DNA Doe Project who their family are, like they're right there, and they can help build the trees back. And that's how you figure out who the John and Jane Does
Makes
are.
sense.
So they had a good success with that. It's kind of an experiment that they did. But I was just really surprised that so many people were matching.
To the Does.
Yeah. So it's pretty cool.
And you put their link on our Facebook page.
I did because our Facebook page explains how you can upload your DNA from
to those
Ancestry to
sites.
those sites. So if you're interested in helping solve cold cases, that's there's some good information there. So
Okay.
check out our Facebook page for that.
Well, I need to do that. Did you do that? Did you upload yours?
Did.
Okay.
I did. So if we're related to John or Jane Doe, or if we're related to a criminal,
Okay.
then that's how.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Went to another genetic genealogy seminar by Barbara Ray Venter, and she's one of the people, well, actually, the genetic genealogist who identified the Golden State Killer back in California a couple of years ago. And one thing I found interesting was that they had a DNA profile of the killer that suggested that he was balding and that he had blue eyes. And I just found that really interesting because she got it narrowed down to, I think, 8 different people within the family. And of those 8, only one had blue eyes and was balding. And it turned out to be the killer. I just think it's fascinating that that they're able to deduce that,
From your DNA.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever realized that either. I knew DNA would tell you your hair color and your hair type, but I didn't know it would be like you're bald.
They can tell if you have freckles. They can tell all kinds of things.
Oh,
I mean, it's
that's
not a 100%
Right.
guarantee, but
There's a strong chance.
yeah.
Okay.
So when you see composite pictures of suspected killers, if they've used the technology, they'll come up with something like, this is probably what he looks like. He's most likely got brown hair and freckles.
Okay.
And it's based on they can tell how wide your nose is, all kinds of stuff just by your DNA. So it was interesting just to see. What I appreciated about her is that she didn't take credit for everything. She gave credit to all the different investigators working on the case, and it was a team effort. And I thought that was admirable because sometimes people tend to look what I did,
right?
And she was not that way. And I thought that was a really interesting thing because that case is the one that kind of opened the Pandora's box for other cases with a genetic genealogy. Then attended the one on the West Memphis 3, which is a case that you and I have known
Heard about our whole life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Local here to West Memphis, Arkansas, which is just across the river, the Mississippi River. So I think this is going to be one of those well-known cases that we do an episode on because
it's very local to us, just like Lorenzen Wright was. So is this. So.
And it's still going on,
right?
Even though it's been, I forgot how many years now. So we'll cover that in a future episode. There is a hearing coming up June 23rd, so very soon, about the DNA from that case. So for those who aren't familiar with it, 3 young boys were murdered in West Memphis, and the police ended up charging 3 teenagers who were oddballs, we'll say.
They didn't fit into the southern small town back then at all.
Kind of goth looking and heavy metal
They were
music.
a little odd.
Yeah.
So immediately like, oh, those kids must have did it.
So they get imprisoned for years and years, and eventually they get out.
We took an Alford plea.
Which is basically agreeing that there's enough incriminating evidence, but they're not admitting guilt.
Right.
So somehow, I don't even know how they maneuvered to get to that point, but they get out, and so they've been advocating to have the DNA that exists tested with like genetic genealogy to show who
they
actually
should.
was, right? So if you're guilty, you're not going to right? Well, the police want nothing. The prosecution doesn't want anything to do with it. They'd have to admit error. They'd have to admit they put the wrong people in prison. They don't want to do that. So there's lots of controversy about that. A lot of celebrities are involved advocating for the 3 teenagers that are adults now. So at the CrimeCon, a journalist, his name is George Jared, he has been on this case since the beginning, and he interviewed one of the stepfathers of the victims, one of the boys. And the stepfather made some very odd statements, and there was like a profiler person there with him that kind of would comment on his observations of how Terry Hobbs, the stepfather, would answer some questions. So they'd ask a question, and Terry Hobbs would go, well, as a parent, X, Y, Z. As a parent, ABC. So he kept trying to emphasize his role. Right. As a parent, I would do this. As a parent, I would do that. So we won't go into all the details because we'll incorporate that into
another episode.
But it was interesting that when the journalist asked him, well, when this hearing comes up and the judge, orders the DNA to be retested or even destroyed, how do you feel about that? And his answer was, well, if he decides to destroy the evidence, then so be it.
Oh, that's totally the opposite of what the guys that were accused are saying. Like, they want it tested.
Why wouldn't
He's
you?
like,
but why, if you're as a parent,
right? You'd want it tested. You would want it tested.
Just like John Benet Ramsey, which we'll get to in a minute. That father wants that as well. So anyway, it was a very interesting interview. Then there was another genetic genealogy session with people from Othram and the Las Vegas police. And that the detective Ray Spencer said, I thought this was amazing. They have a 94% solve rate with their crimes in Las Vegas. Which,
wow. That doesn't even seem possible.
No, the original CSI show is based in Vegas. Mm-hmm. If that's any indication as to what kind of crimes go on there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought that was really interesting. But they solved a case using genetic genealogy, and they had so many cold cases at the time that they only had 5 part-time detectives working in the cold case. Once they solved one using genetic genealogy, it lit a fire under them about all their other cold cases, and now they've hired an additional 4 full-time people and 1 sergeant. So it was neat to see that because
the growth,
happened,
right.
And I suspect that's Memphis cold case detectives. I've heard rumors that they're like part-time or understaffed,
right?
And I suspect that could be the case, but
I would think that's highly likely.
Yeah, so it was interesting. So Othram has another website that you can upload your DNA to. It's called DNAsolves.com, and the difference between Othram and DNA Doe Project or Identifinders International or any of these other companies is Othram is a one-stop shop. They can do the extraction of the DNA and do the genetic genealogy all in one place, like the lab work. Everything's all together, whereas other companies, you have to send off the DNA to this lab. The lab sends to it's got this like whole chain of custody thing, whereas Othram is a one-stop shop. So that's what the Las Vegas detective was, really impressed with their setup and what have you. But they have a website called DNAsolves.com that you can upload your DNA to. That's just used for criminal cases and John and Jane Doe's. So when you upload it, you know what it's being used for. So it's relatively new, but it's another tool that's being used for there. So anyway, we attended other sessions about wrongful convictions. Nancy Grace was there. She's super passionate. She's a really great speaker in person. I saw her last year, and I didn't really have a warm and fuzzy about her before CrimeCon. But last year...
She's kind of over the top.
She is over the top.
She's over the top on TV.
But what I appreciate is after every session, the last 10 minutes or so, they open it up to the audience to ask questions. People will be lined up at the microphone to ask questions. Last year, there was a lot of people, a lot of victims' families that were going up and talking to her, publicly about their child's case, that the police said it was a suicide, but, the family felt like it's not, blah, blah, blah. And Nancy would go, I hear you. Go right over there. There's my producer, and let's see what we can do. Like, she dignified them. She didn't just dismiss them. This year was a little different speech. She was explaining her history with her fiance that was murdered, and how that kind of got her into the space that she's in now. It was still a good talk, but she's very passionate. So I give her that. And then the last thing of Friday was that I attended was the Delphi murders, which I could go on about this for hours. That's the case that's in Indiana. The two young girls, they asked the two girls were friends. So one of the girls asked her older sister, "Hey, will you take us to
was it a park?
A park." Because they had the day off for school unexpectedly. So they get dropped off, and I want to say they're 12, 13, something like that. And one of the girls' father was going to pick them up that afternoon. He shows up. They're not there. They, the community's looking for them all night. And then the next day, I believe it was the next day, their bodies were found. And the sad thing is there was a phone. One of the girls the phone was next to her, I guess. The police have it, and the girls recorded on Snapchat the murderer. The guy is walking. It's a little blurry, so it's not like a very clear picture. And you can hear him saying, "Go down the hill." That's all the police have ever released. They have not released how the girls were murdered. And it's been, I think, 5 years. And the case, it's just odd that they have the killer on video. They have his voice. They have him walking, but it still hasn't been solved. So they talked about using genetic genealogy with that. But again, it's one of those police department things, which we'll talk about when we get to John Benet Ramsey, where they're keeping everything really close to the vest.
Right.
And so the family doesn't have necessarily a say-so in how the case is solved. But if there's DNA... then
why does this keep happening? Because that's the thing with Nancy Little's case too. Like, there's evidence, we think, unless it's been lost, that could be tested.
There was DNA. We know that because it was publicly, the prior detective said it.
But I feel like that this was a theme we heard over and over and over that weekend. The police have evidence, but they won't test it.
Yep.
They have evidence, they won't test it. Like,
it makes, I guess,
why?
It's an ego thing? I don't know.
It's super disturbing.
So the Delphi murders, the family, they're so resilient. They have a booth set up at CrimeCon that you can come and talk to them, and they have made a park in their community in the
honor
two girls' name. Talk to the grandmother,
they were
grandfather,
selling
shirts to kind of raise money for that. But they are just doing everything they can to keep that case alive in the public eye, because there's two sketches of this guy that the police released that look nothing like each other. One looks like a heavy-set older man, and then they released another picture years later saying, "Oh, actually, the suspect's this guy," and it's like a younger picture. There's just a lot of...
Didn't you say they won't release to the public, like,
how they were murdered?
The girls died?
No. Because they said the killer is the only one that knows. I guess they're trying to avoid people claiming responsibility that, because there's some crazy people who do that. To me, I don't know. I don't know that we need to know how they were killed, but it's just sad that somebody's walking around that may have done this again, or will do it again. And it's a small town. It's Delphi, Indiana. I mean, there's not a huge. It's not a big city. 1,000 people, I think. So that was Friday. That was Friday afternoon. So it was a lot, but that just kind of gives you a taste of CrimeCon, what's involved. So on Saturday, you join me.
Yes. And, I'll discuss a little bit of Saturday because that is the only full day I was able to attend. Again, thanks you, Allegiant.
Sponsored by Allegiant Airlines.
My flight home was Spirit, and it was much better. So I'm just going to give a shout out to Spirit Airlines.
Yeah, it was the first time flying Spirit. I was impressed.
So I enjoyed it a lot. Saturday was a full day. It wasn't a half day. So interesting. I think one thing I thought was interesting is it's very respectful. We said that. Like, it's not glorifying any of the gory details. It's giving a lot of respect to the victims. But I did think that a lot of the people there are interesting, the people that attend, because I just mean it's people like you and me, or it's people that just find this stuff extremely interesting, or people that want to help, or it's
a mixed bag of folks that are there. There's people who are victims that are looking for
it's a unique
audience of like, can you please help me? But then there's just people who are interested in, like, what do they call them, like you sit in a chair and solve a crime, armchair detectives or something like that. Yeah. There's people who are online web sleuths, and that are just interested in helping.
Yeah. So it's just it was a interesting vibe, I thought, there. But it's super respectful, though. I appreciated it. The first thing that I got to attend was and now I lost it. Investigate Discoveries. They had their Reasonable Doubt show. The hosts were there, and they were interesting. They were talking about why people give false confessions, which I've always thought is interesting. Like, why in the world would you ever confess to murder if you didn't do it? And so they talked about the different tactics that police, because one of them is an attorney on that show, and one of them is a detective. And so they talked about the different tactics that the police can use to put pressure on people.
What's legally allowed.
Right. Depriving them of water, going to the bathroom, not letting them sleep, all this stuff. And it kind of makes people crazy to the point where, like, I'll say anything. Just let me go home. So that was super interesting. Another thing they covered was how to tell if someone's lying. If you're ever called to be on a jury, things to look for. And I thought, oh, that's neat. I hope I'm never called to be on a jury.
I've never been. I would love it.
I do not want to do it.
I would love it.
It's too much responsibility.
It is, but
I could maybe handle like a car accident or something.
It's true.
But if it's depends like a murder, like, no, I don't want that responsibility. But I thought that their discussion was very interesting.
I got to go on Saturday, not to interrupt you, but I started my day off with Dr. Henry Lee, who is a very well-known scientist, a forensic scientist.
I wish that I had seen. I watched.
He was hilarious. He's so funny.
So I'd only seen part of The Staircase. That's a documentary on Netflix about the Michael Peterson murder of his wife. And Dr. Henry Lee is in that documentary. And I only watched it after we got back. And he's funny in that.
Oh, he was so funny.
He's super funny in the documentary.
Yeah, he's the.
I wish
he was very
met
entertaining.
him.
He's actually going to be at the next conference.
I would try and meet him then. I liked in the documentary, they get on to him. They're like, well, you gave a signed book to someone and you were very complimentary to them. And he's like, that's my culture. What do you want me to say? Like, you need another job. Like, quit being a blood spatter analysis. I don't know. He had the whole
he's
courtroom laughing.
He's very funny. He was, what I appreciated about him, and I didn't bring it with me, he gave some statistics about, from the FBI, about 1 in 38 non-Caucasian men are at risk of murder in the United States. And so he gave the statistics by men and women. I'll post it on our social media because it was interesting. The other thing I appreciated about him is he was kind of making fun of the shows like CSI or any of these modern TV shows that, they solve a case in 38 minutes, without commercials, and how they can just go to the computer and type in this thing, and all of a sudden it shows you where they live and where they work and all this. He's like, I wish we had that technology, but it doesn't exist. It takes a lot longer, a lot harder work. And he did say, the TV shows like that have made have educated people about the techniques that are used
Yes.
in the science, but it's not that fast.
Right.
So I thought that was interesting.
Well, I mean, like, before CSI, I didn't know that was a job.
No,
You know,
true.
before that TV show came out, I just thought the police did all the work, and that was it. I didn't know that there was a separate group of people that would come in and
There's another group. I was watching the episode the other day because I've been binge watching CSI. There's another group I never had considered that clean up.
Oh, that's gross. No, thank you.
I cannot imagine.
I hope they get paid extremely well.
Right? Can you imagine?
Because no, thank you.
Sorry,
but no, those that is interesting because I do feel like those shows are not probably the most accurate, but it did shed a light on a group of people and a profession that I wasn't aware of existed, and that I bet a lot of people probably didn't know existed.
Right. I think it's also tainted now legal issues, because DNA is everything that people, in juries and stuff, if they don't have DNA, then they're a little less apt to convict somebody because they don't have the DNA that everybody else is using on these TV shows and stuff to solve crimes. But anyway.
Well, after him was like the big daddy of the weekend. It was the John Bonet session, and her dad was there, John Ramsey.
So surprised that he would come.
It was fascinating. So I forget how long they're supposed to be, an hour, 45 minutes, something like that. Mm-hmm. But they were running out of time with him, and everybody in the audience, when the host was like, "Okay, we're running short of time," everyone in the audience was like, "No,
we don't want to do Q&A. Just let him keep talking.
Just keep talking," because it was just extremely interesting that he was there. To me, he talked a lot about the case. They talked about
it's been 25 years.
Yeah, they talked about the ransom letter. They showed that. That was fascinating. He talked a lot about how the media played such a huge role in the case that I was.
It was right after OJ.
Yes, he said that OJ left a vacuum. So the OJ trial had ended, and that was such a huge success for crime TV because I don't really think anything had been done like that before OJ. That it was like a vacuum, and they're like, "Well, let's do this next." And so he said they really twisted things. That the media would be like, "Okay, the Ramseys are taking their private jet to the funeral," and he's like, "I don't have a jet. That was the people I work for were kind enough to lend me theirs. It's not mine." Or the handwriting on the ransom letter, the media were like, "Oh, it's Patsy, right?" Well, oh, it's Patsy. Well, he described how they did the test and how it's ranked, how it's scored. Like 1 is a definite match, 5 is not a match, and he scored a 5, and his wife was like a 4.5 or 4, like barely there. And the media were like, "Oh, that's it, she's a match." Then it was
the whole session, I think it was called Debunking Myths or something like that.
So it was
they went through all the different things
myth
that the media has perpetrated
right.
and clarified things.
And then part of the last one was the most recent theory, because they've blamed at different times in that case, they've blamed different people in the family. Originally, they blamed John, saying that he was like
the father. Mm-hmm.
The father, he was abusing her, sexually abusing her. Then they blamed the mom, saying, "Oh, well, it's her handwriting." And the most recent one was they were blaming the brother, Burke, because, they said, "Oh, he killed her in a rage because she ate his snack," and the parents covered it up. So they went through each one of those and explained it a little bit. And I was left, because I'm not going to lie. When I saw that, I think it was CBS. Mm-hmm. When I saw that CBS show several years ago with that theory about the brother, I was like, "Oh, that makes sense." Mm-hmm. It's probably him.
He sued them.
Yes. So that just shows you, though, like how the media can have how they can spin things and how they can have such a strong influence, because you watch something for an hour and you're like, "Well, that person's guilty." But I don't know. I left that session being like, I have no idea what happened. Like, I do not know.
Because the ransom note included a specific dollar amount, $118,000.
Right.
Which was the same amount that he got as a bonus at his company.
Or something.
Yeah. So it's evident that it's whoever committed this crime was someone that had some knowledge.
Right. So he was thinking it might be someone he worked with.
Someone targeting him for some
that reason. Was not happy with him.
And he seems to bear that responsibility. Mm-hmm. That seems weigh on him. Mm-hmm. That he realizes that her death is directly related. And I also learned that he had a daughter that died in a car accident too.
Yes, so I had no idea. He's had a really tragic life. it's just very, very sad. But the thing that was the most shocking to me, again, is the DNA evidence. The fact that the Boulder police won't test the evidence they have.
So there is DNA. They said they've excluded.
Yeah.
They've excluded the family has been cleared.
Yeah.
From this DNA that was on John Bonet. So not the father John, not Patsy the mom, and not Burke the brother. So it's someone, outside the family.
Right. And so he was trying to do this. He's trying to do this petition. It's on change.org about trying to get the DNA evidence removed from the Boulder police, who will not test it, and move it to one of these outside companies to test it.
Yeah, I think it's called Justice for John Bonet Ramsey. So if you go to change.org and just type in John Bonet
It'll
Ramsey,
pop up,
it'll pop up. They're looking for 7,500 signatures. Last I looked, it was over 7,000, so it hasn't quite met it.
But I mean, why not test
the Boulder? Because they don't want to admit
that they did something sloppy, maybe.
Yeah, they had never, I think he said, or the author, Paula Woodward, that was interviewing him, said that Boulder had never had, I guess, a murder.
Right, it was a small police department.
They didn't know what they were doing. But
DNA was new back then.
But they refused help from the outside. Like they wouldn't accept help from Denver or from any of the bigger places, and that was what he felt the most upset about. And now, 25 years later, when there's technology and tools to tell us who that DNA sample is related to, and then you can reverse engineer it and figure out who that contributed to it.
Why not?
And they don't want to. So this petition is asking the governor to take the DNA away from Boulder police and give it to
an outside company that would test it. Yeah.
So for anybody who's interested in helping that, go to change.org.
Yeah. I thought that one was it was very full. That everybody wanted to hear him.
I wanted to go to
I felt bad for any other panelists then because that was like crickets and nobody.
Well, so I wanted to go, at the same time there was one on entomology about how insects are used to help determine
body decay.
When someone died, how they died, where they died.
That would have been interesting.
I wanted to go that one, but it was at the same time.
I know.
I was like,
that poor bug person.
I know.
There's probably nobody there. It was literal crickets. Boom, boom, shh. Nobody was there.
Well, they do record them. So if you're a member of, I think they call it Crime HQ, it's like $50 or $60 a year. You can watch all the sessions at CrimeCon at home. So I might just subscribe. You think you can subscribe and get it for like 3 days for free?
Yeah.
And watch that one about the bugs. But yeah.
I think I missed this next one. You said you went to another authoring panel, the Justice Through Genomics.
Genomics, yeah. So that one was Authorum, again, is the one-stop shop DNA lab and investigative genetic genealogy company. They talked about how they helped solve this 1974 murder of a lady by the name of Carla Walker. They've just done a lot, they can take the smallest amount of DNA and that's degraded, it's been underwater, all kinds of things. This lab, this company has done things that other well-known labs have not been able to do because they didn't take existing technology and fix it. They created brand new technology. So it's kind of exciting to see what they're doing in that space. They were able to clear somebody on that Carla Walker case. Her boyfriend had been accused unofficially, I guess. He had to live under a cloud of suspicion for 50 years.
Oh, man.
And they were able to get his name cleared and identify who the murderer was. With just a small little speck of DNA on the victim's dress.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. So
this was a very heavily DNA.
This one was
genetic genealogy.
I went last year in Austin, Texas, and it was much smaller because of COVID. So they restricted how many people could come, which they should have done this year. And it was much more emotional last year. I think every single day I left in sad or in tears because the cases were more not well-known cases, and
touched your heart
to hear the families speak unedited. Like you can watch it on Dateline or whatever.
Right.
It's
different seeing it live.
Seeing it live.
Yeah.
There was last year there was what was that guy's name? He kidnapped all these girls. Oh man, in like Ohio.
Oh, and had him like in his basement or
Yeah,
something?
yeah.
I don't remember his name.
But
it was a Hispanic guy, right?
Yep. Starts with the D.
Yeah, I don't remember,
It's
but I
tipped my
know
tongue.
I know what you're talking
So
about.
anyway, one of the victims was there, and what I appreciated about it is she didn't talk about that, right? She talked about how her life is after and what she's doing to help other people.
Victims
And
people.
you know, last year the BTK serial killer's daughter was there, and to hear, you think about, okay, he gets arrested, he's a terrible person. You don't think about his family.
Right.
How does that work? Where they had no idea.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's what I appreciated last year.
It's totally different.
It was different vibe last year because it was just more pull on your heartstrings.
This seemed very scientific.
This one was more sciencey,
which I found interesting.
Yeah.
I found interesting. I really did. I guess it's just, going to be different every year, probably. I got the feeling after Saturday, I was like, good grief, you could have killed anyone before 1995 and gotten away with it, I guess.
And how many people got
because
improperly imprisoned?
Yeah, but I mean, the DNA has made
it's
such a huge difference, and now being able to track people through ancestry and stuff. I mean,
and they're going back in time and solving these crimes that were committed in even the 50s and beyond.
It's fascinating.
It's really interesting. You got to attend one about where there's
no crime. That was my favorite.
I was late to that one, so I missed it.
That was my favorite one. I think it was his name was Matt Murphy. I'm fairly certain. I know he was an attorney. I think he said he was a district attorney. I can't remember from where, but he talked about 3 different cases, and it was that circumstance where you do not have a body. So how do you do the case? How do you prosecute someone for a murder if there is no body? And that's fascinating. Super interesting. What I liked that he said and what stuck out to me the most was he said those were his favorite cases. And I'm thinking, why? That seems so difficult. He said it was his favorite because on these, you get to bring in so many witnesses. You get to bring in the victim's grandmother, their grade school teacher, all these character witnesses, people that knew them, and be like, what were they like at Thanksgiving? Or what did they love? What was their favorite color? You get to talk in the court a lot about the person's life, not just their death. You get to know them, who they were when they were alive, because you don't know how they died. You don't know where their body is. So you focus a lot on their person, them as a person. And I know that's what you and I want to try and do. We don't want to just focus on the gory details. Want to know what the people were like when they were alive and focus on their life and get to know them. And I thought, wow, that's so nice, because I felt like it was really giving the victims a lot of dignity and respect. And that's the feeling I got from this guy. And I thought he was just very impressive. I got out of breath.
I know the case. When I walked in, he was covering the case about the older couple who sold a boat.
Tom and Jackie Hawks. Look this up. Look this case up if you guys haven't heard of it. I'd never heard of it. Fascinating. It's just about a married couple that sold a yacht, and then they go they're disappeared. Don't know what happened to them, and they have to try and track down and figure out what in the world happened to these people. It turns out, they made a bad business deal with some really shady people who were trying to rip them off, and then the killers, I guess they drowned them. I think they threw them overboard. Was it the husband
and wife or a and they brought a child on the yacht to
it was a whole scheme, though. It was a husband and wife that had their baby on board, and then they had other people helping them, and I think that they threw the people overboard. I'm pretty certain because they said, that was the thing. He said the anchor was missing, so they think that they used the anchor to tie these people down and throw them overboard and steal their yacht. But there's no body. They haven't been able to find the body. And then another one that
but they were able to convict the victim.
They were listening. They got the guy was in prison or in jail for some other type of crime, and his wife would go and visit him, and they were able to listen to their conversation, and they heard the wife whisper to the husband, "Remember, no body, no crime." And they were like, "Oh." So from there on, they started just watching them, and watching the wife that was out, and they were able to.
And they were religious and
yes. Fascinating. Tom and Jackie Hawks was a 2004 murder. Very interesting.
Florida?
Yes, Florida. And then another one was about, I think, Edward Shin and Chris Smith, and they were business partners. And again, that was another crime where Chris Smith is gone. Don't know what happened to him. And it was his business partner that killed him. And I think to this day, the guy.
Oh, that's the one where he was emailing the family, pretending to be
the guy. Edward Shin.
Like, I'm all over, traveling all over the world. I'm depressed.
He said he was with some like model, and yes. So Edward Shin killed his business partner Chris Smith, but then he starts emailing Chris Smith's family, pretending he's Chris Smith, and he's telling them he's in another country with a model, and the district attorney
goes to an event,
finds the model and talks to her, and she's like, I don't know this person. Like, I was never there. And it was just, it's amazing. It's amazing. I can't imagine having to do that kind of investigative work and without a body. Like, DNA, like we said, DNA is so heavily relied on. Not having that, like how?
And that one, I think he was murdered in the office. They discovered there was blood everywhere.
But the guy, I think, still won't admit where he is.
Yeah,
I don't think he'll say where he is. And then another crime was about the I think it took place in Las Vegas. I can't remember where the names, but the body was apparently the woman whoever killed. It was a woman who killed her boyfriend, and I think she drove off into the desert. They were talking about that, the Las Vegas desert. That it's just tons of bodies.
Have you seen
there,
this
apparently.
lake? This lake that's been in the news this week that's drying up, and all these barrels of I think it's in Vegas, like mafia related. All these barrels. I'll say all these barrels. I know there's a barrel it has a body in it, and then they found a couple other bodies because the lake is what do you call it when it lowers?
The lake went down. I don't know. It receded.
It's receding.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh. Anyway, yeah.
So apparently Las Vegas is like a hotbed of
94% success.
Places to bury people. But he was interesting. No body, no crime. And then the one that I attended after that was called Stolen Babies. And that one was the sad one for me. I thought that one was sad. It was not a homicide. It was about a woman named Donna Green, who gave birth, and then 5 days after she gave birth, her baby was stolen, and she has no idea where he is to this day.
From the hospital?
No, I think this happened in the 70s too. She was at the hospital. She was like 16 when she gave birth. She was really young. She met another woman at the hospital, and they were both looking at babies. And this lady's like, oh, I'm here to visit my sister. She just gave birth. And they're just chatting and being friendly. And they would visit one another in the hospital for, the next 1 or 2 days. Well, on the day she was being discharged, this woman approaches her, and she's like, can you give me a ride home? And Donna's like, I guess, So Donna got dropped off first, and then the other lady got dropped off second. So Donna's like, well, that's how she found out where I live, because she saw where I got dropped off. It was a family member.
Okay.
So then I think 3 days later, Donna's at home with her brother and her baby, and this woman comes knocking on her door. And she lets her in. Donna's like, okay, this is weird. Like, I barely know this woman. Why are you visiting me? And the woman was like, oh, I just want to drop by. I'm in the neighborhood. And again, she's only 16. She's very young. She's super tired. She's a new mother. She's like, I didn't want to be rude. I didn't want to tell her she needed to leave, but I didn't know what to do. She said, so my brother was there. I felt comfortable. So I decided I was going to go upstairs and take a shower. So she says, I went upstairs. She said, I had a funny feeling, but I just sort of tried to dismiss it. I didn't know what it was.
We get this stranger.
Yeah, but she feels comfortable because her brother's there. She thinks, okay, well, it's probably okay. She's gone maybe 20 minutes in the shower. She comes downstairs. Her brother is asleep. There's no baby. There's no woman. She wakes her brother up, and she's like, what happened? He's like, I fell asleep. She must have taken the baby. So this lady just comes in and, steals her child. And so she went to the police. She tried to get help, and nothing happened. And then all the people in her neighborhood started talking bad about her. They're like, oh, she must have gave her kid up, or she must have done something to her kid. And so she got persecuted by friends and people in the neighborhood, and
for losing.
And again, she's only 16 years old, and so she gets really reclusive, and she stops doing anything about it. And it's like 20 years later, she's like, I gotta find my kid, So she's an adult at that point, and she tries again, and it's just going nowhere. And so they put up a picture of what was heartbreaking. She didn't have a picture of her baby. No photographs. The only thing she had was somebody drew a picture, like, what is that called, where they go to the police?
Sketch.
Yeah. So she described the baby, and the sketch artist drew it, and that's all she has. And so from that, they did a picture of what, he might look like, comparing him to her and her family. And so her son would be like in his late 40s, I think now. And she was just so sad because she said...
Did she have other kids?
She didn't eventually have other kids. She says she feels like it's hopeless and that she's never going to find him. But meanwhile, she hopes to help other people in similar situations who've had their children stolen. And that was a whole different topic. They were talking about the type of people that steal children. So there's a specific type, like it's pretty much always women, and it's women. A lot of times they're overweight, which I thought that was interesting, but I guess it's because they can disguise if they were pregnant or not. And usually they're married or in some kind of a relationship. And it's usually their partner who wants them to have a kid. And they probably can't for some reason, medically or something. But they want to save that relationship. So they go out of their way to steal a child. And to them, almost every case, it doesn't matter who the child is. It's just the opportunity. Like they're just looking for a chance, any chance. It doesn't matter what kid. Just any kid, as long as they can get a chance. And they're almost always stealing them out of hospitals.
Where was this case?
Oh.
Was it Georgia?
Yeah, I think it was Georgia.
You telling me?
Sad.
Yeah, so...
Super sad.
Even if, that really the only way I can imagine that she'd be able to find him is through...
Again, DNA.
Like an ancestry if her child happens to take a test.
Yeah.
Or her grandchild or something.
That one was sad.
The problem is the African American community is underrepresented in those DNA databases. It's for whatever reason, it's largely tilted towards Caucasians. So they were talking about that in the conference at one of the sessions. How you see DNA being used to solve all these old crimes, but that's all old white people that they're catching because that's who's in the database. Because I guess white people are taking more of the commercial Ancestry, MyHeritage, 23andMe tests, and that's
unfortunate.
Happening. So they're really, I don't know the solution to that, but for whatever reason, there's just not as many African Americans that take those.
Well, that was pretty much this. They always do question and answer at the end of these, and that was like, have you taken a DNA test? Have you done that? And she had. Okay. It's just the mother has, but she's just waiting. You're just waiting.
Either a child or a grandchild or something. Yeah. Wow. That's sad.
While I did that, you did something else.
Well, I went to the Dateline panel, which was not about any kind of case or anything. It was all the folks that you see on the.
Which that's cool.
Oh, it was Keith Morrison is legendary with I can't do his voice. I can't do it. But
the thing about Pam.
I don't know. He's got an awesome voice. He is doing a children's book reading and he's doing one for Calm. It's an app.
Okay, I can see that.
So that it was interesting. He was talking about how he got fired a lot growing up in his career, and they were all just talking about how they got their start and stuff. So it was interesting, not case specific, but. It ended on Saturday with the David Robinson case. Yeah. You went to that one too, right?
Yeah, so this happened at the same time as Gabby Petito. It was the exact same time. And people think that maybe it didn't get as much coverage because, Gabby Petito was a young, pretty, blonde woman. And David Robinson, his son, African American, I don't know, he just got overlooked somehow.
Yeah, that other case just...
It blew up. It blew up. But it was the dad. His name was David Robinson. He's been looking for his son, Daniel. So that's been a year?
It's going on a year, I think. What impressed me most about this father is he...
uprooted his life.
His life was in one of the Carolinas. He moved to Arizona where his son went missing and has just planted himself there.
And is just looking. He does grid searches in the desert every weekend.
Right, he organizes it, not the police.
Because he can't get the police's help, so he's doing it pretty much by himself and some volunteers. It is a weird case. His son was a geologist, moved out to Arizona, and they found his abandoned car, in the desert,
in a ravine of some sort.
Yes, and the airbag had been deployed, but no other sign of him. Nothing. There was food and water, I think, in the car, and where is he?
Right, he's missing, and I think there may have been some maybe some depression or something, something that he was going through. So I think the police are just saying he's a missing person that left on his own accord, and they're not treating it as anything suspicious, whereas the father feels like it's something suspicious. Again, there's a change.org petition for that.
PleaseHelpFindDaniel.com.
Yes, if you go to PleaseHelpFindDaniel.com, which even the name of the website is touching to me. It's not help find Daniel. It's please. He's just, this father is just giving everything he's got to.
I feel like
even financially, he's spending his own money to have things tested and examined that the police aren't.
I think he knows that it could be a sad outcome. That
I think he must have, because they found other bodies while they're doing this grid search. They found 2 or 3 other bodies.
That, but I think he just wants some closure. Just know. I just want to know.
And the police,
where he is.
For whatever reason, aren't helping him.
Yeah.
So he's
that's
taking it to his own hands.
That's how it ended on Saturday. That was a big, powerful.
It was a lot. And then Sunday, there was sessions. I didn't get up early enough to get all of them, but I went to the one about the thing about Pam, the TV show that came out, which was narrated by Keith Morrison from Dateline, about the woman who killed her best friend and framed her best friend's husband.
Right.
So the husband was there, Russ Faria.
And you met him.
I did, but I didn't know it was him at the time. But he gave me his table at the little cafe that I was waiting to on my
I watched
crepe.
That show. It was interesting.
See, I didn't watch it till after.
This poor guy went to prison. Didn't even do anything.
Oh, that woman was cuckoo.
Yeah. So that was neat.
So it was him and his attorney, who is played by Josh Duhamel. I didn't realize that was him in the.
His hair looks different.
He looks a little heavier. But anyway, that was interesting after because I didn't watch the thing about Pam until after the conference while I was home with COVID. So that was interesting. Chris Hansen was there. I did not see him this year. Last year I saw him. He's the guy that does the Catch a Predator, and just letting folks know what type of people are at these events. But the
wasn't Dr. Phil at one you went to last year?
He was last year. Last year I didn't see him, but he was there. Joe Kenda, if anybody watches Investigate Discovery, he was supposed to be there this year. Investigate, not sponsored.
Oh, I got an Investigate hat from there. Oh my goodness!
I got a couple of hats. Because every time you go into this session, they'd be like, "We're giving away hats." I'm like, "Okay." So I have like 5. I don't know. It was pretty cool. So the last session that I attended was Kim Goldman, who is the sister of Ron Goldman, who was murdered with Nicole Brown Simpson, OJ's ex-wife. And she was there last year at the conference I went to in Austin, but it was a special event you had to pay extra for, so we didn't do that. This year, she was part of the regular show, I guess you would call it, program. And she started off with, like, I don't understand why you people are here. Like, I don't get your fascination. Like, we're real people. We have feelings. And she kind of went on to talk about how it's been, 20 plus years and, people are still sending her family hate mail.
That's crazy.
And she was talking about how people are awkward when they talk to them. They don't know what to say. And she acknowledges that, but sometimes people, she said, come up to her with, this is what you need to do, or I think this, or this theory, or that theory. She's like,
she's heard it all.
Yeah. That's not what she wants to hear. And I think that's with a lot of the families of victims. And it's awkward this whole true crime conference where these people are there.
It's awkward because
you go up to meet John Ramsey and
they're there to talk about the case, to talk about the crime.
They don't need
But you don't need to be like, I think this. They've heard it.
Right.
They're still human beings. They're still people.
Like when I went to the Delphi booth and talked to the grandfather and just talked about the park and all the things that they're doing. And, they don't need to hear
your theory on what
honestly, when Kim spoke, it was the only time that it made me a little emotional at this particular conference, just because she was heartfelt. And, she said, as people attend these things, remember the victim, the life of the victim.
The life. See, that's,
So there's a common theme amongst a couple of the sessions
not just their death.
resonated with me, because that's really what we want to do and when we cover these cases is
what were they
honor
like?
their life, right?
Their life is more than the terrible thing that ended their life.
And to remember the family of these people, they're still living with this pain, and just because people have become so hateful because of social media and
the Goldmans, I feel so bad for them because so much attention was given to Nicole that people just sort of brushed Ron Goldman aside.
So it was a very interesting conference. I did enjoy the last year's more
intimate.
It's more intimate, and the cases were different,
more emotional,
but still, I mean, we've been talking about this for how long now?
Like an hour. I'm
wow.
sorry. But it was a 3-day convention, so wrapping it up in an hour is pretty good.
And just to give people an understanding of what it is. You know, it's not like...
It's an interesting thing to go to. It really is. I don't know if I would want to go on a cruise, but...
That doesn't sound interesting to me. But so, coming up, there's a cruise. Next month, I think in June, they're having one in London, which would be interesting. And then next year, it's going to be in Orlando. Yeah. So if anybody's interested, the sooner you sign up, the cheaper it is. Yes. So September of 2023 is the one in Orlando. And the sooner you sign up, the cheaper it is. And you don't need to go bonkers and get the gold or the platinum.
Oh, and we forgot to mention there's tons of podcasters there.
Yes, so they had a whole room where you could interact and
or
meet,
watch live recordings
of podcasters. Yeah, we met some really cool people. One of the guys, the podcast is called Hide and Seek, and I talked to him. He was an insurance agent or salesman and is now supporting himself off this podcast, but he's investigating the case and recording it as he's going through it. So I listened to his first season. It was really interesting. A missing person.
And he just does one case a season,
one case
right?
per season. Okay. I think there were like maybe 12, 13 episodes. And
the ladies at the Fruit Loops podcast were very nice.
They are so nice. They're the ones that when I went to the CrimeCon last year, they were just very friendly. And so Fruit Loops is a podcast about serial killers of color. So they are focusing on
which that's super interesting because most of the time it's like
a crazy white
guy, you know?
So that's their specialty. Crime Weekly, where Derek Levaster and Stephanie Harlow, they were there. So it was just nice to kind of see all the different podcasters. Yeah. And
I enjoyed getting to see that because it gave me a good idea. It gave me some ideas. Maybe that's something that you and I could do. We're a little more established. I don't know.
And that one booth, which we haven't talked about, that we can partner with, that will help put these cold cases that we are covering on their website and add some media stuff.
Builds a network.
Yeah, I looked into that a little bit when we got home, but yeah, it was a really interesting CrimeCon.
Yeah. So if anybody is interested in true crime at all, watches those TV shows, reads the books, listens to the podcast, might be up your alley. Might be something you're interested in.
CrimeCon.com.
Yeah. Next year in Orlando. So, go to Disney World for a day and talk about crime the next day. Make a vacation out of it. I don't know.
I think this is like the 5th year they did it in Indiana. I think the first year. Then they went to New Orleans and Nashville, and then it was Austin, Las Vegas. Next year, Orlando. So who knows where it'll go next? But yeah, check it out if you're interested. I came across another one that's called Savannah Crime Expo, and it's in Georgia this September, in Savannah, Georgia, and we're talking about going. I think it's just a one-day event, but Dr. Henry Lee will be there.
If we end up going, and I don't know what it'd be like to have a booth or something. We'll have to look it up. But if we do end up deciding to do that, or even if we just go just to attend, we will be sure to let people know. Yeah. And if anybody's there and wants to say, hey, that would be really cool.
Yeah, it's SavannahCrimeExpo.com, and it's a much smaller event. They said there's only they
less risk of COVID.
Let's not talk about it. 350 people on average is all they want to attend.
Okay, good.
They'll cut it off. So it'll be much more intimate. Yeah. So if anybody's interested in that.
Well, we thank everybody for tuning in.
This is probably our longest episode, and it's not even about a specific case, but it gives you an idea of what we've been up to. We are working on some other cases, and look forward to getting those out to you in the near future.
Yep. So join us again next time for more episodes and more tales of the dark side of the South.
And don't forget to check us out on social media.
Oh, that's right.
Facebook is What is it? Southern Fried Homicide Podcast.
Yep.
Same thing
on Instagram and Facebook. Well, I'm not going to say my catchphrase again because I already said it once. So we're just going to holler at y'all later. Bye.